Hello and welcome. It's Allecia Maine here, your host for the Whole Horse Podcast. We're here to look at all the ways that the horse industry is changing before our very eyes in very cool, very amazing ways. And we're chatting with the people at the forefront of that change, the professionals, the trainers, the body workers, the researchers that are helping our lives with horses become better and better. Thanks for being here. I love that you're here and listening and learning. And if you ever have a guest that you want to suggest or a topic that you want to hear, just let me know, and I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening. It means a lot, and I look forward to seeing you for season 4. Hi everyone, it's Allecia Maine here, and you're here for the Whole Horse Podcast season 4. And I'm here today with Allecia Maine. Thank you for being here, Allecia.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. And I know we've been chatting a little bit before we started into the recording and into our podcast here. And I would love for you to share a little bit about, just as we begin with my listeners, where you come from in your work and the work that you do with horses. And I know you work with dogs and people as well. And just share a little bit about that journey to the work that you do.
Oh, so we go all the way back to childhood. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, at 5, I knew I wanted to be a veterinarian, but I would soon learn my goal was to be a veterinarian to help animals heal. And I would soon learn in 7th and 8th grade when math and science came in that was not going to be a reality. Um, because I didn't get it. I didn't understand how math worked. I didn't understand how science worked. I didn't understand how uh, there was no interconnectedness for me. It felt very random. So, as time and life went on, I went into the fitness training industry and learned a lot of science, learned about anatomy, physiology, how to get people healthy, how to keep bodies healthy, how to balance bodies. And during my time there, I had a dear client who introduced me to chiropractic care and to acupuncture and, macrobiotic eating and eventually to acupuncture. So through acupuncture, I began studying with my Chinese doctor, Qigong. And that was a really intense practice for me. And I didn't set out to like learn a lot of the things I know right now. It just was sort of like this progression of following these breadcrumbs that the universe had sort of laid out. And during my Qigong time, which I loved, and it just totally blew my mind and changed my total perception on health and well-being and how medicine is done, and our connection to nature and natural medicine, I started studying animal communication. Girlfriend called me one day out of the blue and said, "You have to go to Hawaii." And hey, I don't have the money to go to Hawaii. Like, why do I have to go? She's like, "You love dolphins. My friend loves dolphins. You love, Qigong. She loves Qigong." And she took this animal communication course. So found a way to get there and took it. And while I was in the ocean with the swimming with the dolphins, it was like the bells and the whistles and the trumpets and the angels just came down and said, "This is what you're doing with your life." And I'm like, okay, this is fantastic. And I just didn't know that because of the interconnectedness that I learned through Qigong, not just on an intellectual level, but on an extraordinarily cellular level, this would be my way of helping the animals heal. So I wouldn't be a veterinarian, but I would learn many things. I studied flower essences, I studied homeopathy, I studied body alignment, I didn't really study behavior and training. That kind of came later. The animals actually started teaching me how to teach them. And landed up shortly after 9/11, moving out to Colorado. And a year later, I was given my first horse. and started learning about holistic dog training and literally like everything that I had learned from the human side of health and wellness really started transferring into um the animals. And it just, I can't say I ever set out to be a trainer. I can't say I ever set out to be an animal communicator. I can't say I ever set out to be an energy healer. It's just what the path led me on. And I just kept listening and I kept listening and I kept listening. And that listening has brought me to a place of, grounded, practical, scientific understanding of anatomy, of physiology, of health and well being, but also recognizing that that's about 10% of the equation. And then it
Mm.
was my journey of listening, constantly every time an animal showed up, just constantly listening and literally tuning into the quantum intelligence to say, well, what needs to happen here? Like, show me. And having that background was fabulous because it was like, okay, this is all scientific overlays. And it helped me recognize that there's so much more. So that's really what I started bringing to the animals and their humans.
Mm.
Just a very, very deep listening to bodies and trusting the universal intelligence guidance of like, where do I need to go? Where do I need to put my hands? What do I need to do? And then developing a really just a very, very simple body assessment and muscle release protocol that has been transforming health and lives beyond anything that I could have ever fathomed and has led me to my current PhD research.
Hmm. Yeah, which we're going to get into shortly here. Definitely. And I would love to, because there may be some people out there that haven't really heard or of Qigong or don't necessarily understand what it is. Can you share a little bit about that practice?
Sure. So, Qigong was designed, I don't want to say designed. It was trying to find the best word. Chinese masters would go, the Chinese healers would literally spend a lot of time in nature and in the woods. And they started observing the animals. And they observed different ways in which the animals stretched and moved. And then they also started observing like different plants that the animals would eat. So Qigong became, I guess I would call it at its essence, a system of movement that harmonizes the body, the breath, and ultimately the spirit. And when practiced gently on a daily basis, it really helps improve the energy flow in the body. It helps really reconnect one with their, um, I would almost say their greater mind, not just the brain in their head, but the bigger mind and the bigger wisdom that the quantum intelligence field really is here to share with us. And it opens one's heart. So it keeps us healthy, it keeps us balanced, and it keeps us aligned and in harmony with nature.
Hmm. Mm. Yes, I remember taking my very first Qigong class in university.
Mm,
I lasted one class because at the
yeah.
time I was so ungrounded and all over the place. I think that I didn't have the capacity at that point to access my energy field in a good way. And I've gone back a few, in various ways, and I've found it really powerful work for connection and grounding, and especially for those people out there, and I think you would agree with me, Allecias, who are doing any kind of like healing work or energy work. It's a incredible piece to the puzzle for sure. And I would love to hear from you, Allecias, like how it sounds like that really integrated into your healing practice. How have you seen that sort of weave its way into the practice with animals?
Um, well, I think anytime you're doing healing work, you have to be really, really careful because you want to help and want to take care of others. But the biggest thing that Qigong helped me with, it is such a grounded practice that there's no way I could practice and not heal myself first. And obviously, healing's always like it's not like, oh, okay, I'm totally healed. Like it's just a progression of different layers that we work through. And really at its essence, it's getting us to our essence. That's what it's really about. So it's been so instrumental in my life because I didn't grow up in a world of being connected with nature. Even though I grew up with nature, even though I knew I loved nature, it was still an intellectual
Mm.
experience.
Mm.
It was not an essence experience that kind of bypasses my prefrontal cortex. It was still a thought about calculated experience, not a 360-degree immersion. And so it's always helped me really get to a deepening of understanding of who I am as a being, like who I am and what am I doing here? And how does this body work? And how does like all this energy interconnect? So it's been an
Mm.
extraordinary foundation for me that went far beyond, and I did not expect this, but it went far beyond the teachings of sitting in class for 3 years on Fridays with my Chinese master and my class. It just kept deepening, and the more that I kept trusting what the essence of Qigong is the Tao. And the Tao is basically, I guess I would say what quantum physics says today. It's the essence of everything. Like there's nothing that's separate. Everything is included. Nothing is excluded. There's nothing good or bad. Things are always interchanging. And it's really just helped me understand that there's a very deep connection that runs through everything.
Mm.
And it gave me an awareness to be honoring and respectful of all life, of all sentient life. And where it really assists me, there's nothing that I do that isn't Qigong. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like it's not a practice like a religion, right? You go to temple on Fridays, you go to church on Sundays. Like that's wonderful. But this is like imagine that mindset. Imagine that awareness of sacredness of all life and the intelligence that all life holds 24/7. Like it gave me such a deep knowingness that time and space sort of started to shift in my reality. And
Mm.
that's where, like, doing animal communication sessions at a distance or being able to work on bodies very precisely at a distance and having really incredible transformations take place when I've never even seen or touched physically like this other being. So it's been a very, very profound part of my life because I can't say that there's a separation anymore, between my life and Qigong. And this ultimately is what I found is the energy of nature. It's the essence of all of the animals. They all live in it
Mm.
all the time. And
Mm.
once I left New York and once I left, studying with my teacher, the animals have been such extraordinary teachers. Trust me, I never thought I was intelligent enough to be able to do a PhD study. It's always been the animals telling me and informing me this is what's possible.
Mhm.
Showing, you didn't learn this in school, but let us, come into our earth school. Let us show you what else is possible. And then, it wasn't just the experiences that I was having, but especially with this PhD research and the way I run my sessions, like literally being able to film this and have live proof of people just watching, like this is what's possible when we start to enter the quantum energy field. It removes so many limitations that we've been told are possible with healing and with health and with
Mhm.
honestly the essence of who we even are.
Mhm.
So it's been fascinating. Like I never, regardless of everything I've studied, I never show up like I'm the authority, like I know. I'm like, I don't know anything. All I can do is just show up and listen. And thank God I have the background that I have because I can understand what is taking place. And then I have a frame of reference to be able to share that with the humans, on a very practical, grounded level.
Mm.
Um, but what I find so fascinating, and especially with this chi approach, it's like I'll have a client call me to connect with their animal, and yet they land up transforming. Like they land up feeling so much more peaceful. They land up feeling so much more connected to themselves. And I think that's honestly the biggest and most profound thing about Qigong. It is the essence of who we are. And so it's really beautiful, and something I never would have expected was to not only have, massive benefits for the animals, but the humans, literally start to drop back into their bodies and back into their sense of humanness and humaneness and get out of their
Mm.
head, and it's like, that's what I really think the animals came. I think they're the greatest chi masters on the planet. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's what they came to teach us.
Hmm. Beautiful. Yeah, and as someone who also does distance work, it absolutely lands and makes sense for me. But there may be some listeners that are like, "How do you do that? Like,
Yeah.
how
Yeah, yeah.
how can you, connect from afar and elicit change or facilitate like transformations at that level?" Um, and I would love to hear, your take on that.
Sure. So I can't give you, like I always laugh. I say, so there's quantum physicists, right? And these guys have like these huge chalkboards. And on these chalkboards, they write out all these like letters, numbers, like these equations that are mathematically supposed to explain to us how all of this is possible. And that's, a lot of them, like they term it the, quantum physics. And I just laugh and I say, well, I'm basically your chalkboard and your whole entire equation brought to life. Like, because what they're talking about and telling us intellectually is possible, you and I are basically living the quantum field reality, that everything is connected, that there is nothing that is not connected in time and space. So for me, where Qigong assisted me was I, like you, was way in my head, like really, really smart,
Mm-hmm.
but in a different way. I was not smart scholastically. I was smart because growing up in the Bronx, I would start to, like, you just see connections really fast. Like you have to be aware of how things are connected, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And that's what Qigong just was like, the, you know, quantum leap or the rocket ship to not just having that as an intellectual thought, but to being in the energy so deeply that there is no more disconnected. There is, like,
Yep.
we are taught, our education systems, unfortunately, the real purpose of them is to teach us to fit into a box. It disconnects us from nature. It disconnects us from the truth of who we really are. We say as humans, humans only use 10% of our brain. Well, that's because we're educated to only use 10% of our brain. And so when you start experimenting with this work, when you start seeing, like, can I really send energy? Like, if I'm doing a body assessment, can I really do this when this animal is 8,000 miles away? Like, is it actually going to work? And then you hear the feedback. They're like completely different. You know, can I explain it like the chalkboard can? I can't. I can just tell you, as a living, breathing being, all of this is really possible. Because
Mm-hmm.
I'm not I would not call myself, an intellectually intelligent person. Like, or shall I say, I would not call myself a scientifically or mathematically intelligent person. but I'm
Mhm.
a genius when it comes to working in this energy field. It's just that I had so much practice and time of relaxing the box that my mind was, and making it back into a circle through my Qigong practice every day, that it was kind of, I don't want to say it was natural because it's not like I just snapped a finger and it happened, but just because of this daily practice, it became something very natural. And so to speak to it simply, like telepathy, okay, did you ever play the game? I'm going to think of a number from 1 to 10, right? Well, that's most basic telepathy. One person is thinking, holding a picture in their mind, and the other person is seeing if they can tune in. Like at its basic foundation for energy for telepathy, that's it. In terms of bodies, well, you know how moms and kids are so connected that, like, you know, a kid could burn himself 1,000 miles away and mom just happens to call and say, "Are you okay? Is everything okay?"
Mhm.
That's a difference between our brain education, which we think that the brain in our head is our first brain, and it's actually not. Our gut brain is actually our first brain. And that brain takes in raw data at speeds that we cannot even fathom. Like it's like speeds faster than light. So when we look at that energy piece, if we can get out of our mental brain of thinking that there's only a 3D reality, which is what we're educated to,
Mhm.
then what starts to happen is like our gut starts opening to a greater degree to receiving a lot of the raw data that we're receiving on a very natural basis, but we've just been educated not to trust it. I find it very odd as I go through my life and just seeing what is possible, that we get educated to not trust our gut. And then
Yeah.
that's the exact thing that we teach all of the animals, to not trust their gut instinct. The place where they function at the, the most supremely, we teach them to override their gut, like we teach ourselves to override our gut, and then we call that smart and we call that progress. And I don't get that.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing. I remember back to reading, I think it was the Tao of Equus, but it was a part where Linda describes like spending so much time with her horses, and this one day she's out with the herd and she spent like 8 hours or more a day with the horses, and she felt like she had gotten punched in the stomach at one point. She thought she might have gotten kicked, and she was like, what was that? And within milliseconds, all the other horses' heads went up around her, and she looked over at the road, and there was a bike riding, like a, bike riding by. And I just recall that with so much, like, it was so helpful to me to understand, what happens in our horses, because if you watch a herd of 100 horses, they're not just going to wait till like the horse beside them, they see their head coming up. Like by the time 100 horses wait for the domino effect of that, like they're, someone's going to be dead. So like, it just really drove home this piece around the visceral enteric gut brain, as a part of survival and instinctual communication between animals. But also I think as humans, like we have that intelligence, and like you said, I think we really um we forgo it because it's often stuff that, oh, I don't want to listen to that because I need to do this, or this is what I really, what my brain says to do, or my parents or
Exactly.
whatever, right? Like,
Yeah.
someone saying, telling us this is the best way to do it. I mean, we see it in
Yep.
horses all the time. This is something that I speak to a lot is, so many of us have had a trainer or two. I've had a few over my lifetime with horses that have been, screaming instructions at me, or encouraging me to be potentially harmful to horses, when my gut brain is
Yes.
like, I'm not okay with this. Like, this
Exactly.
does not feel okay. And of course, my horse's gut brain is like, this is all very terrifying, and I am not
Yes.
happy with this situation, right? Like,
Exactly. Well,
Mm-hmm.
this
Mm-hmm.
is the thing, right? We get it done to us. So what do? We do it to others.
Yeah.
I could cry 1,000 oceans worth of tears for how much we land up betraying ourselves and how much we land up betraying our animals, even though we know we love them.
Yeah.
By not listening to and trusting our gut. And also, so much about training is about what the human thinks. And you brought up a really good point. There's a very big difference between instinct and intelligence and intellect.
Mm-hmm.
Intellect is not necessarily intelligence. Listening
No, I
to
mean,
the gut, the Chinese have known for 5,000 years that the gut brain is the first brain. And us
mm.
humans, go with the neuroscience, check the neuroscience. Now,
Well, I
here's
was,
what's funny.
yeah.
The neuroscience doesn't always, the first premise of biology is that structure determines function.
Mm-hmm.
The first premise of biology. I mean, it took me 30, almost 40 years to understand that in terms of being able to work with the animals and working with their structures. And I was like, oh my God, now this makes so much sense. So you can change the neurochemistry and somebody can feel better, but that doesn't mean that it was actually easier for them. And so when I started working with structures, and especially working with structures at a distance where there was no possibility whatsoever for a placebo effect, I started to really realize, whoa, I think we have training backwards. And I also think we have learning behavior backwards.
Mm.
And I think that this kind of groundbreaking study that I've been doing with these case studies, not so much groundbreaking in the fact of looking at structure to see what happens in behavior, but the fact that I'm doing this stuff anywhere from 100 to 8,000 miles away, and we're seeing massive results is like, whoa, we need to listen to what the animals are telling us. Because when I have horses that, they've been to 4 trainers, or, they've been to the vet, they've been to 3 vets, nobody can figure out what's going on. And I do a body assessment, and all of a sudden that horse's entire behavior changes. Their beingness changes. They can't lie about the fact that they were not comfortable. Somebody just couldn't find where they were not comfortable. And as soon as that got straightened out, the uptake of the chemistry, the way the brain chemistry re-regulates itself, is mind blowing, without any
Mm-hmm.
medications, without any training. So that has been fascinating because, the horses have guided me in this study the whole way. But I had to override a whole bunch of my intellectual beliefs to follow that intelligence of my gut and the intelligence of these animals. Because they were like, you need to help us. Training's going bonkers. They're coming up with all these things of the way they should train us, but nobody's checking our bodies first. And that was a mind blower.
Yeah.
That was a huge mind blower, because one of the things I learned from a really incredible veterinary researcher here in Colorado, he said, bodies never lie. People can make up all they want. People can say all they want. There could be a million different training methods, but the one thing I've learned is that the animals have codes of conduct. They have codes of training each other. They have ways of doing things that are so body centered, and you can't always see it because it's happening from their energy field. But the gratitude that I have is like being able to tap that field and then be like, wait, you guys, I don't want to tell you what's going on. You tell me what's happening here. You tell me what we need to know. I don't care about what I think. What
Mm-hmm.
I think is irrelevant. It's the only thing I care about is what's their truth and how do I share their truth with people? Because I think we've headed off in directions that are so ridiculously overcomplicated, but we get certain results. So we think, wow, this is fantastic. But, in talking with them and in doing this study, it's like, nobody should be getting on any horse, doing any kind of training, doing anything, even if the horse looks completely sound, without having been able to check their back.
Yeah.
If you're having a behavior issue, you're having a health issue, it's not always, what we see in the Western medical world, like, oh, okay, well, give an antibiotic or give a pill or give it this or give it. A lot of the times it's because literally the bones are out of alignment, and those bones are connected to the organs and to every single nerve and to every single fiber of their being. And those
Mm.
organs have emotions, and those emotions are going to create disruptions in behaviors. And I
Oh,
can't tell you, Alexa, how many horses I have worked on. And every single one of these Mustangs in this study, none of them have lameness issues. None
mm-hmm.
of them have gait
Mm-hmm.
issues. They all look fantastic. Every single one of them moves beautifully. And that's the even more challenging part for humans, right? Because we don't think to look for anything being off unless we see actually a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and, I add to this, like after doing, I became an equine sport therapist in 2005. So it's been a while. And I've never, ever worked on a horse that doesn't have something going on in their spine.
Right?
Ever,
Even if they look
ever.
okay. Yeah,
Yeah, no.
yeah,
Like even if they're moving out beautifully and I've seen horses. I worked on a horse once who was like a dressage, like in young riders, so like high level dressage. The most scary spine I've ever felt.
yep,
And he was doing crazy,
yep.
crazy stuff under saddle, but
So
he was
these,
also just so generous and amazing.
yes,
And when I got my
yes,
hands on his body, I was like, you got to be kidding me right now. Like, how does this? And of course, he broke down, probably 6 months after that, he was in a field with a leg injury that was, that ended his career.
yeah,
Um, and it blew me away that that was happening. And I had an opportunity actually like 2 days ago. I was out working on two mares who accidentally got pregnant this summer. I don't think it was accidental. I think they planned it. Um, but of course, that feeling they all they wanted was spine work, all they wanted, because of course all of their viscera was just like being stretched and moved, and that was it. They were like, please put your hands
yeah.
on our spines and
I
and
think
and
every animal, every horse wants that.
oh yeah.
I mean, it's just because it's natural. When you see them, this was a funny thing that I came across. Like you watch them mutually grooming each other.
Yep.
They're, people will go, oh, isn't that cute? I'm like, you don't get it. They're hitting each other's acupuncture meridians. They
Yep.
know where one of them is hurting or off, and they'll go right in there and they'll use their teeth as acupuncture needles to help each other out. So
Yeah.
it's, what I'm finding so interesting from this study is that it doesn't matter the age of the horse, doesn't matter what the horse's temperament is, doesn't matter what the horse went through. Every single horse, in their own way, depending on where they're out or they're off, every single horse is not only you will see, while it's being filmed at really long distance, that these animals are shifting their bodies into different alignments. They'll start yawning. One of the horses in the study, literally, she just laid down and passed out
Mm-hmm.
and got back up, and we just reset her nervous system. And so, one of there's two massive things here. One, I know that heart math kind of tells us that we can, like, our heart coherence goes out to maybe about like 14 feet
Mm-hmm.
is what can be measured. Um, I'll be completely honest. I don't 100% know what field am I working in. If it's 8,000 miles away and there is a physical change happening through an energetic process that's very structured, but
Mm-hmm.
albeit like it's still through the ethers. So how far out then does coherence really go? Why are we ever getting on an animal without knowing what's going on inside of that animal? Because in terms of seeing how fast these horses are shifting their behaviors completely on their own
Mm-hmm.
without any further training in that moment, there's always like follow-up training, but there's such a significant shift in behavior. It's like, hold on a minute, we got to rethink what we're doing. We got to
Yeah.
rethink training. We got to rethink neurochemistry. Um, we've got to rethink learning, because a lot of the times, and I'm sure you hear this too, oh, my horse is being a jerk, or they're being stubborn, or they're being this, or being that. And the truth is, I learned this from a dog one day. We were out, I was working with him, and I was like, buddy, what's taking place here? He goes, I can't help it. And I was like, oh, come
Yeah.
on.
Oh,
What do you
yeah.
mean you can't help it? He's like, I can't help it. I go, oh, come on. Of course you can help it. He's like, I can't help it. And he said, check my body. So I checked his body and he had 3 ribs out. And I was like,
Yep.
oh my God, you
Yeah.
really can you? And I don't think people understand that enough. They want to think, they don't want to give their horse the credit for being as intelligent as they are. So they make them override their instincts. Then they don't want to give them the credit for like trying to tell them, look, something's off balance. I can't help it. I'm not trying to be a bad horse. So it's just so sad to me, because it's always like they always land up losing. And
Yeah.
I want to help them win,
Yeah.
you know? I mean,
Well,
if they're
yeah. It seems too like there's this tricky bit where what I see is it's often the overly generous horses that are the ones that just get the crap end of the stick
well,
because
but the stubborn ones do too.
yeah, I think
Think
so. I think
every
so.
one of the horses in this study is a 3-strike kill pen Mustang.
Right. Yeah, I was
Like,
gonna ask
this
what kind of
was
horses they
not
were. Yeah. Yep.
not due to any fault of their own. That,
No.
we don't listen. And again, you just said like these overly generous horses, right? Which is incredible. But then you have these horses, they were not designed to be in nature, to live amongst themselves. They
Totally.
really weren't designed for us to be riding them. And so we have no idea what they go through first of all, the terrains that they go through and all of that when they're on their own, that's one thing. But then they get rounded up into, in these horrible roundups and get chased for miles and do things that are so not natural to them, that for us to call them stubborn, or a bad
Yep.
horse, or for them to hurt somebody because somebody didn't listen,
Yep.
it's not their responsibility. It's ours. Like, if we're supposedly the most intelligent species, I'm just going to call us out. We certainly don't behave like it, right? If we have like forethought and afterthought, we are not using our greatest intelligence, which I think is our instincts and our gut. And so, working through, I have a process, I call it the instinct body assessment and muscle release protocol.
Mm,
And it basically just hits all the back alarm points of Chinese medicine, but it also corresponds to all of the chiropractic points, because the
mm.
two of those really kind of like they're an overlay for each other. And I was trying to figure out, I was like, why is this so effective? Like, why are we seeing the kind of results we're seeing the way we're seeing it? And I was like, all of a sudden I heard, because you're hitting every single point and every single nerve, like along the whole entire spine. That's how you're dropping these horses into such a deep reconnection with their own nervous system,
Mhm.
able to
Mhm.
take a deep breath from inside out. And that rebalances so much of their structure.
Yeah.
Because when you get an injury, you're going to stop breathing, and you'll breathe again, but your breath is usually shorter. So, to me, what the most fascinating part is, they basically told me that I was going to put together this PhD. And I just, naively was like, oh, okay, that's cool. This is great. This is really exciting. I had no idea the
Mm.
implications, like, of what would be found out.
Yeah.
and how, I hate to say it, but we're working backwards. We're working against these animals, asking them to override stuff, even if it's very positive. Instead of starting with we should be starting with knowing that we have a clear nervous system before we ever ask a horse to do anything. It is the most fair thing to do if we're looking at getting on their backs,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And I guess what's fascinating, like I said, I mean, I'm not a scientist by any means. I'm astounded that I'm like, oh, I guess I've somehow turned into a researcher. But it's
Mm-hmm.
like the horses were the ones that brought forth this research. I just helped put it into a systematized way where people can look at this and watch this and say, oh my God, and start getting people's brains to change. Like, perhaps this is the missing link in training. We shouldn't look at the problems afterwards. We should be preventing the problems beforehand.
Yeah.
And I think, you and I both agreed. It's like we've both looked at plenty of horses that move great. We'd be like, there's nothing wrong here. Like, what's the problem? Like, it's not that, like, how many times have clients gone, it's not their body. They're fine.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, and
Yeah.
we're
But
like,
it tracks back, like that nervous system connection
yes. Yep.
is, I mean, I know for myself, like when I injured my back 10 years ago or whatnot, like I couldn't think. I
Yep.
couldn't I was terribly grumpy. And yeah, like had a temper.
Yeah.
I was not myself. And I
Right.
couldn't do the things that were asked of me. I couldn't even put my socks on, and so these when I sort of track that in the horses that I work with, I think, yeah, we need to, like, for what I find in so many horses and the injuries that they potentially have dealt with,
And
that
everything
are,
they have to override, right? Because they
oh,
heal, but
completely
healing in the Western medicine model is not the same as healing the whole system in the Eastern model.
not at all.
Like what you found with your body alignment totally affects behavior.
Yep.
And it goes right back to the biological principle. Structure determines function. So it's like if we want optimal performance or brain function, right? Then we have to always be looking at, is the body clear of all static?
Oh, for sure. I mean, how many horses do you work on that have pole stuff? Like, I
I
would
get
say 90% of the horses that I work with have stuff at between the occiput C1 and C2. And that's like just the starting point of
just the starting point
that's
because
just the
that's,
beginning.
well, and I think too that we don't, it's interesting. So I started teaching a course for the body assessment that I do with the dogs. And what I kept finding so fascinating was when the body is out of alignment, it screws with the ability of the cerebral spinal fluid to
Yeah.
flow properly and evenly. That whole thing, I mean, right there, honestly, you got your nervous system, you got your respiration system, and those things actually regulate your brain function and the brain chemicals. Where I look at neuroscience and I'm like, well, this is fascinating. You guys are understanding all the brain chemicals. It's still not the root of the issue because the brain chemicals aren't just happening on their own. The structure is literally determining how those chemicals are actually happening and taking place.
Mhm.
And so, like I said before, like I'm not a scientist, and I literally was just listening to something from this really brilliant guy in Boulder who's talking like about all like the chemistry and the neuroscience, and it was like really intense, and like I was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm with Tony Robbins. I feel like I can't breathe, like I was like, that's okay. I'm
Yeah.
really glad I understood that. But you start working on a body, guess what? all of that chemistry is happening anyway. It's all starting to open up, and you feel more relaxed and peaceful about it.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if you find this, but I find so many times if I'm working on a horse, that human's getting worked on too.
Oh
Their
yeah.
entire nervous system, and part of, not only do we have the actual structure of the horse, but we also have the interactions, of a human whose structure might not be balanced. So they might not be, receiving optimal brain chemistry function. It's just fascinating, like how much energy these animals hold and how much intelligence they hold to help us start unlocking so much of, reaching our own greatest potential.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, when I did the study, I was like, so if this is true in these horses that have, and also the dogs too, if this is true in these mammals that have, a spine and a nervous system, how much could this be so true for our kids, that are wearing these crazy ass backpacks that weigh 900 pounds, or,
Right.
people that have experienced any kind of trauma? It doesn't matter if it was physical, emotional, psychological, you know, anywhere there's been any kind of impact that hasn't been dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
I think it compromises our optimal brain function. So where we're constantly coming at beings and looking at the brain capacity, I'm like, I don't think that you can actually, especially based on the results of this, I'm like, I don't think that you can determine any kind of optimal brain function unless you know what's going on with the structure. I think we have to, take a step back and say, look, you can't tell me that that chemistry
Mm-hmm.
is that chemistry without telling me what the structure, what shape is the structure in. Because
Yeah.
as soon as you change the structure, it'll automatically change the chemistry. And to
Oh
me,
yeah.
that's so fascinating because, like I said, I think the approach that we're taking is backwards. We're trying to train to the brain, and the brain is only a servant to the body.
Oh yeah. Well, you see, I had a really interesting, actually, like a little piece of this. A friend fell the other day on his arm, and it was stretched back behind him on a stair, so he almost dislocated
Oh,
his shoulder.
wow.
And then came and lay on my table, 2 days later or a day and a half later, and his whole cranial structure had shifted to that side.
Yes.
It
Yeah.
it had all sheared to that side because he
Right?
was like, "I'm feeling it up my neck, I'm starting to get a headache," like, and that's from his shoulder, like, literally had pulled his sphenoid, his occiput, like, everything over, and the sphenoid contains the pituitary gland, so your whole endocrine system, as well
Right.
as your membrane system and your cranium, and then your dura down your spine, and all of your fascial systems, like, it was like just that one fall
Exactly.
did all of that, within days of it happening,
And think
and
about, though, and are aware of all of this, right?
yeah,
Because of that you do. Think about if he went to a shoulder specialist.
yep,
And it's just like, I'm not putting down Western medicine because I think it's got some really incredible things, like if you're in an emergency or if you need a surgery. But I don't think it has any real concept of how, I mean, it's become so compartmentalized. There is no shoulder surgeon on the planet, or just even shoulder doctor that would have said, well, yeah, let's check your cranium, let's check your, it doesn't happen. And so, your friend, like, technically his shoulder could have healed, right? But with all that other stuff being off, he would potentially get more headaches.
yep,
Other things, he might start to get grumpy. Now, because the shoulder doctor would have said, well, your shoulder's fine. That would have been the
yep,
end of it. And then, so I think the importance of all of this work too, and especially with this study, because it's at a distance and there is no placebo,
yep,
is that we have to start recognizing that what Western medicine is capable of, and it's great, is that 10%. like if there's a surgery needed, if there's an emergency that's happening, but we have to fill in the other 90%,
Yeah.
and we have to understand, like, on a much deeper level, all of the interconnectedness of what's happening. Because all I see is animals getting faulted for things that quote unquote traditional training or quote unquote traditional medicine, it hasn't been taught to look at,
Yeah.
and this is just a very simple study, like I say, groundbreaking because there's no physical contact taking place. So there's no possibility that these animals could be lying, that
Yeah.
their bodies are realigning, and the quick uptake of behavior. I always find it fascinating. I'm like, I think it's great that we're understanding all this microcosm stuff, like the exact chemicals and the chemistry. But I think we can also get lost in, hey, there's a much bigger picture
Yeah.
taking place here, that in order to truly be most respectful and most honoring of these beings who do not have to allow us, to be on their backs. I mean, you spoke about the client who had that horse was just so generous. I mean, I
Yeah.
see all the time these horses are trying so hard, and we're asking them to override. Like, and no pun intended, but I think in so many ways we're overriding them. We're overriding their, ability to
Yeah.
be true, authentic beings that are connected to their own instincts, that know best how to take care of their bodies, because we have some agenda of what we want, and it's like, I think across the board. And I'm not calling it out, like, don't ride your horse. I'm just saying, I think it's time for us to up level our whole entire way of thinking about horse, of being with horse,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
coming back to the simplest thing. Like, without a body, you wouldn't have a behavior.
Yeah.
Not possible. And that's
Yeah.
where so many things happen. And I think honestly, I think it's part of our human thing. We are constantly avoiding what we're feeling. We're constantly avoiding, like, what's truly authentic to us, because we were taught to override ourselves.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
like,
yeah, that piece, I think I just want to track back to the piece around riding, the overriding.
"Huh, all the
I love
time."
that. That's so great. And it, I think my listeners can concur, like there's such pressure to ride. Like if someone's at a barn with
Yes,
other people around and they're like, I don't ride my horse. We just hang out and we just like
totally.
do our thing. It's like, considered so weird that
And
they're
that would
not.
be me, by the way. That's what I do.
Right? Exactly. And for me, yeah, like 80% of the time I don't ride
Yeah,
because I don't the it's about the connection.
right.
And I
Because
think
you're
I hope
connected to your body, that's why, and then and therefore you're
exactly.
connected to your horse's body, and it's not.
Totally.
Uh,
It still feels just as amazing as writing does or whatever, but I think yeah, I hope that this podcast over the 4 seasons that we've had, like that's one thing I've really tried to get across. It is okay not to ride. It is
Totally.
okay not to ride, and it doesn't devalue you or your
No,
horse or your connection or your
no.
partnership
It
to
actually
not
deepens it.
ride.
It
Yeah.
actually deepens it because, two things that the horses shared with me that I was really blown away with. They said, well, my horse shared this with me. He was literally dictating a book to me. So I'd show up, just wasn't even
Yep.
writing. I'd show up with a notepad and a pen and say, okay. He said, do you realize how many people that ride are actually afraid?
Oh,
He said, it is the most unbelievable thing. It's like, skiing is one thing, right? You're afraid, you do it anyway. You're not on another sentient being. He said, but the amount of fear that
yep.
he said, even well-seasoned riders and horsemen, the amount of fear that you humans carry, and then you get on our backs. He said, it's unbelievable. He said, because from right there, that cuts off the connection, because you're fear in fear. And most people will intellectually tell you they're not in fear. You afraid? No, I'm fine. But the horses are like, nope, they're totally afraid. Their gut is locked
Yeah.
up, their low back is locked up, their shoulders are locked up. It's, you know, we're overriding our fear using these beautiful, magnificent beings because we feel like maybe it makes us powerful. Maybe it feels like it puts us in control. But the real thing that we're missing is how much these massive hearts want to help us heal our own and help us feel safe in our bodies again. And it's
Mm-hmm.
just so funny because literally this study really it pulls it back. It brings it all back home. It's like you have no business, in my opinion, you have no business getting on a being, regardless of how good a horse person you are or what you think you know, unless you know what's actually happening in that horse's body. That is the fairest, most humane way, I think, for us to be with horses. Like, I'm not opposed to riding, but do you know how many people make horses ride and do things and they haven't even asked the horse if this is what they want to do?
I do know how many. Yeah.
Right? They just assume, right? They're like, well, because I
Yeah.
want it. And it's like, hey, this is a partnership. This is a collaboration. This isn't a one way about your ego and what you want to do and what you're lacking or missing or what you want to try to figure out, on their back. It's really like we've got to find a way to come to this where
Yeah.
it's so much more respectful. And I don't really feel like that's an intellectualized concept. It has got to become a gut level,
Yeah.
really deeply listening to have the best relationships with animals and with our horses because
Mm.
they have so
Mm.
much more to teach us than we could ever teach them. And
Yes.
remember too, anything we're teaching them literally is because of our own agenda. So we're not even asking them what they might want to learn. We're telling them. And that just like it's like having this love of horses and for horses and this heartbreak about what we're still doing. But also this hope of how dynamically and extraordinarily beautifully it can change.
Hmm. Yeah. I feel like many of us are spending our lives, as horse lovers, learning how to love horses.
Mhm.
I know that's how I feel because I look at, how I've been in the past and even moments now, where I'm like, oh, that was really, really unloving. Um, how do I shift that? What do I need to be within myself around that? What agenda did I come here with or need did I have or maybe I had something to prove, like it takes a lot of I think that's coming back full circle to the qigong, like awareness of oneself to
Oh God.
know what am I showing up with today,
Yes.
and
Yes.
how is it landing, how is it impacting, like what is most helpful, and yeah, I'm
And
just
to
really,
show up at the
yeah.
barn, not sitting there going, oh, what is my horse going to be like today? Right? Well, your horse pretty much is probably going to be really calm and like with its friends and, doing its thing. It's really not about how your horse is showing up today. It's how are you showing up? I mean, that's, not only do I think that the paradigm has to shift from before you ever train a horse, you have to know what's going on in its body. Like you have to make sure your horse's body is clear, even if you think it moves great.
Yep.
Because like you
Yep.
said. And the second part is you said it, we put so much pressure on them. We have got to stop, thinking of them as the escape from our life and start
Yep.
showing up. Oprah had a thing in her dressing room and it said, you are responsible for the energy you bring into this room.
Mm,
And I think both of us are very, very aware of how many times people show up in their head to the barn with a being who doesn't know how to be in their head. They only know how to be in their body. And their
yep.
main goal is to get you. back into your body so that you can be feeling and experiencing that energy of communion with all life that we all live in.
Mm.
And, just even changing that simple piece, just
Yeah.
having that awareness of who am I showing up as for my horse.
Mm.
It's like
Yeah.
I I too, like, as I grew up, I always wanted to ride, always wanted to ride. It's like half the time I don't want to ride, you know? I because I didn't listen to my horse once when he told me I shouldn't ride him and I rode him, I had 13 broken bones. One shot,
Yep.
and
Yep.
I'm like, whew, learned a lot about healing, learned a lot about listening, not
Yeah.
overriding my instincts, or when my horse tells me I don't think this is a good idea, to listen.
Yep.
I
Cool.
don't
Good.
know better,
Yep.
right? I don't.
Mhm.
I think we just have to get out of this mindset, and the horses are really here to help us with this, that we know better.
Yeah.
We don't. And if we could just simply shift that, get out of our egos, like, and again, that comes back to most people ride from fear, right? So they're going to always be overriding their instincts and they're
Yeah.
always going to be more intense. But we could just show up and be like, hey, I want to just share with you, like, I'm having fear about this. And the horse goes, cool.
Yep.
Okay, it's not me. And the person goes, cool. I can't believe I could actually
Express
let
that.
go of it, admit it, take a deep breath, you know? Just that simple fact of
Mm.
showing up in the authenticity of what you're experiencing and not having to make your horse responsible for that or try to figure out how to help you through that when you don't even want to see that you're there.
Yeah.
It can shift how everything, works with training and with riding and honestly with human understanding. Us
Mm.
understanding a heck of a lot more than what we've actually been taught is the total truth. I think it's far
Oh,
bigger.
beautiful. Well, we're at the end of our time together, Alicia, but I've so appreciated this conversation, and yeah, I think it's the absolute perfect next piece for where this and where we're kind of headed in the knowledge that we're all yeah sitting with and growing. So thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
When I've got all the PhD case studies together, now I've got to write up the PhD study. So I'll let
Nice.
you know when that happens.
That
And
would be amazing. I'll include it as a link on your podcast here as well. And I would love to have you share where people can get in touch with you.
sure, you can go to Animal Healer, HEELER.com, and that will bring you to my website. And if I can help
Wonderful.
you or help your horses or your dogs or your cats, happy to.
Yay. Yay. Thank you for sharing your time today. I'm really honored and I learned a lot. So
Thank
I'm
you.
sure that the
Thank
listeners did
you.
as well.
Well, thank you for
Mm.
having your podcast, and thank you for sharing all the incredible information that you share.
Oh, yeah, it's a pleasure. It's an honor for sure. Oh, awesome. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next time, and appreciate you listening today. Okay, bye for now. I've enjoyed some amazing sessions with podcast listeners and their horses over the last several months and connected with people around the world and horses and horse herds, and I'm very, very grateful for this opportunity. If you'd like to connect with me for a session, you're always welcome to reach out, alexa@alexalinton.com. And if you ever have a podcast guest that you'd love to hear from, just message me and I will try to get them on. Thanks again for listening. It's been a pleasure. I love hearing from each and every one of you about what you're learning and what's changing for you and your horses. So thank you for that. It fills my heart. Okay, have a great day. Bye for now.